to the Escape Hatch to Wellness. Today's topic for this podcast is Yoga Nidra meditation. So I'm here with my mom, who was the very first person to introduce me to Yoga Nidra, and that was in 1994 when you gave me that very first CD. 1994.
That seems like forever ago, and I was introduced by a friend of a friend to Yoga Nidra, and that CD that I gave you was the one that she used to teach me, and I had never heard of it before. All I was going to her house to do one-on-one for yoga instruction, and before I left that one day, she said, "Have you ever heard of Yoga Nidra?" No. She said, "Would you like to try it?" Yes. And so she put that little, and you always imitated him so great. Can you say that?
Welcome to Yoga Nidra.
That's it.
Then they had those bells that would
Yes.
bang, ding, ding, ding.
Ding.
Yes.
Mm.
But I want to ask you, though, when she first gave you that, did she tell you what it was? I mean, how did she just hand you the CD and say, go try this out? I mean, did she set this tone up for it? What did she...
She played the CD that day at her house, and she said, "Do you want to do some Yoga Nidra?" And I'd never heard of it, but being the curious person that I am, and having been familiar with yoga for so long, I wasn't intimidated in any way by something new. So we laid there and did Yoga Nidra. And then I went, I know that you need that on ships for all the crazy people that you deal with. And so that's 1994. Oh my God.
Mm-hmm.
And then I don't know how many more years after that, Amrit Desai, Gurudev, came to town to teach the workshop, the Yoga Nidra workshop.
And you went to that?
Well, the magazine, Natural Awakenings, asked me if I would interview him before he was coming to town. Now, he may have been here before that, but that was the first time that I was knowing that he was coming to Naples to do that workshop.
Do you recall what year that was?
I'd have to actually go back through my articles, but it was while you were living in Nashville.
So I had left ships the first time. So I was working probably for Del Webb back then.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Because it was after he came to town, and that was how I met Ganga and the crew that came with him to help set that up. And it was a weekend workshop.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was after that, after the interview, after the article was published in the magazine, that's when he called me and he said, "Would you come here and write books with me?" So that's how long ago it was. And I still remember the morning that I was sitting at the window in the bedroom and I was writing whatever editorial it was for the magazine.
Mm-hmm.
And he called.
Nothing like when a internationally recognized guru is on the phone, because then of course you can see the phone number zip up and the person's name, and you're like, oh my gosh, do I answer the phone? What does he want? Why is he calling me?
Why is he calling me? Yes, and he thought that because I understood when he was talking and doing the interviewing, and because I'd been exposed to Yoga Nidra before from that CD and was familiar with it, we could have an intelligent conversation, and I'd already had the experience. So that was why he was calling me. He said, "You understand what I'm talking about, but if you come here and live, he said, you understand it intellectually, but when you come here and live, you will understand it at a much deeper level." And that's how we ended up there.
Okay, no, we just went from 1994 to 2012 very quickly. So let's kind of back it up a little bit, because what I would like to talk about, though, is when you first practiced that with that CD that yoga teacher gave you, I'm going to guess that she really didn't get into how it works or the benefits of it. Just, do you want to practice? Because the one thing I've run into, which is one of the reasons why I say it's meditation now, it's a Yoga Nidra to me, but to the world I say meditation, because that word yoga puts people off. Oh, I don't practice yoga, but you don't have to because you lay down. So the Yoga Nidra is yogic sleep.
Mm-hmm.
Now, with being yogic sleep, you lay down and you just listen to the guided message that the teacher or the instructor guides you through. But what I would like to know, though, is what did you notice different in that original practice? Like when you first experienced it, did you then practice every day and began to see shifts in your life? Did you practice it once a week? I mean, how did you incorporate that CD into your life? Do you remember?
Well, I liked it a lot. First of all, it's effortless.
You just lay down, yeah.
You lay down and you follow the guidance of the person who's leading you through the body. And that's what that particular one did. And so you relax your body part by part by part, point by point by point. And it's not anything that you feel like you have to work at. I mean, there are some things that you do that you have to focus on, but this is just a gentle trip through the body, so to speak. And it was just easy. And I like meditation. And I could sit for 10 minutes and try to get rid of my thoughts, to try to silence them. But that did it for me, and I didn't have to do anything. That was the effortless part is great. And the other thing was, as we've talked many times, is that my life was just covered up by anxiety for so many years. And to be able to get rid of that, and I won't even say not to get rid of that, but to have that go away, like dissipate,
dissolve
a little on its own until most of it was gone. That's pretty amazing. Anybody who suffers from anxiety or panic attacks would be an automatic solution for them.
Well, stress, anxiety. I mean, there's so many benefits from practicing Yoga Nidra. It's just, number one, making the time for it, and then, of course, continuing the practice. Because, having tried other forms of meditation, I remember when you first gave me that CD, when I worked on board, and I would use it. So when I was cruise director, I really needed it then, because the amount of pressure that you have to deal with all those passengers, a staff of 55 or
thousands
more,
a week,
and this constant rotation of people coming and going, and having the pressure to deliver revenue and ratings simultaneously. This is what you need to get a promotion or keep your job, right? So I had my day was structured that I had 2 hours that belonged entirely to me. That was from 5 to 7. Those 2 hours, no one was to disturb me unless they were dying. Like, literally. Do not call me. Do not bother me. The rest of the 22 hours of the day belong to anybody, but those 2 hours are mine. So I would either, take a nap, I would work out, I would read, I just would hunker down in my cabin. And so I started to integrate that into that 2 hour time frame. So it helped me be more well rested. So I found that when I would go out, I was able to work longer hours and not get tired. My energy was more sustainable. But the mental chatter was something that was not sustainable with that CD, because I just listened to the CD. I had no idea how powerful the practice was. I had no clue, because I didn't have a book. It was the CD to listen to.
That's all we had.
Exactly. Well, come to find out, since then, is there's the original book by Satyananda. It's the blue book with the lotus on the front. So there are 4 schools of Yoga Nidra in the entire world, and we have obviously IRES, which is Richard Miller's program, the Amrit method, the IM method that belongs to Yogi Amrit Desai and Kamini Desai. The Himalayan Institute also teaches. And then there's a school in India, I believe, that teaches. So you can become a certified teacher through those 4 schools. And that's it. Satyananda's book was the very first book from which Yoga Nidra platforms came from. So from the 4 schools, that's where the inspiration came from his book. But even when you read the book, you can still kind of wander from topic to topic. And that's the one thing with those meditations. When I have I'll go to a yoga class and I'll have somebody, you're in Shavasana, they're going to guide you through Yoga Nidra, and they'll read Satyananda's Yoga Nidras, and they're all over the place. And, I've listened to Richard Miller, obviously the I Am, because that's what I'm certified in. And
I have too.
The one I like so much about the Amrit method is because it makes sense. And when you understand how to use Yoga Nidra in your life, then everything else unfolds naturally with it, versus the other forms, which I seem to have to work at and like following along. It's this jumbled conversation so many times. So with that, you have now become a teacher. Mm-hmm. I'm a teacher and have been teaching since 2012. Yeah,
something like that.
That's when I started. Yeah, mm-hmm. That's when I started with my teaching. So when it comes time for Yoga Nidra, you know that you have benefited from it. We know that with Richard Miller's program with iRest, they have been working with the military.
PTSD.
For PTSD, for all the soldiers coming home.
But what was his name that was Kamini's fiance for a while?
Eric was with soldiers coming home, but he adapted yoga for the soldiers.
Not Yoga Nidra.
I think he does Yoga Nidra. I can't say for sure.
Warriors, isn't it?
Bootstrap. But that's yoga.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's a yoga for soldiers coming back who come back with
limbs missing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So he works with them specifically to help the mind and the body obviously recuperate. But
this might be a good time to confess. I've been listening to the same Yoga Nidra CD
mm-hmm.
from Amrit Desai for 10 years.
That's a long time to listen to the same thing.
Same thing.
And I'll tell you, when I go to teach a class, I try and mix it up. So I have been teaching 5 days a week. And every class I do, I try and make it unique. Now, because I teach in a variety of locations, I will teach the same class for the week in those different locations. But I try and make it different every single week. And then when I stop myself going, well, how do they really know? Because they're in the twilight zone, and they probably don't exactly know what I'm saying verbatim. But the fact that you've listened to the same Yoga Nidra for how many years?
10 years. And I've never gotten tired of it. I have tried other Yoga Nidras. I've done the iRest Yoga Nidra. And I've done the iRest... I've also done the iRest of not just Richard Miller, but there are other teachers on YouTube mm-hmm. that use his method. I've also listened to other people who were trained by Kamini or Gurudev, and so I've experimented, mm-hmm. but I go back to that one, and I find it interesting that it never gets old. Mm-hmm. I never get tired of it, nor do I ever get ahead of him. I mean, obviously, after 10 years of listening to the same one, mm-hmm. you would think that I could probably recite that script. Uh-huh. Well, he doesn't script anything.
He wasn't scripted when he recorded that. No.
So I don't get ahead of him. I don't do things before he says to mm-hmm. do them in the sequence. And so, there have been times when I fall asleep if I do it at nighttime. I have also used it when I've been sick. Mm-hmm. A number of times I've had the flu or...
That's rest and rejuvenation.
Rest and rejuvenation. And I may have done that 4 times in one day mm-hmm. to help my body restore itself, because it's the equivalent of doing that, of 3 or 4 hours of sleep.
A 45-minute Yoga Nidra is the equivalent of 3 to 4 hours of restful, restorative sleep. Because of the way that it ties into the brain waves. Because it allows, when you, this is what I believe. I'm not a scientist and I'm not a doctor, but I do know that when you can get out of your own way, your body can actually restore itself and, rejuvenate itself.
Well, you're 80, what is it? I think it's something like 80% of your body's energy runs your brain. The brain uses 80% of the body's energy.
Mm-hmm.
So when the brain isn't working, that energy that's been trapped in the body, and that's why we move from point to point to point.
The meridians.
That
Mm-hmm.
meridians, from the wrist to the elbow to whatever, that energy then can go to do its work for restoration and for healing the body. So if you're sick, it's medicine.
Mm-hmm. Well, because when you have trapped, first of all, when you have holding in the body, on the most subtle level, you need to let go of that, because it lets go, it releases the meridians and the energy that moves throughout the body in order to heal itself. So whether it's trapped in the joints, it's trapped in the organs. I mean, but when I said, getting out of your own way, it's because when you can listen to a guided experience, then it gives the mind something to do, is what I tell my students, is that way you can pay attention to it. So that way, if you have thoughts that come in that begin to distract you, just coming back to the teacher's voice, or to come back to an intention. And speaking of intention, that's one of the reasons why I like the Almert method to the extent that I do, is because it is intention based. So many people have affirmations that they listen to, or they, I will be this, when I lose weight, I will be, or I will lose weight, or I will stop smoking. That's all future based. So when you can be present based, the I am in it, then it begins to plant positive seeds in the brain. So when you come back out of the meditation, your brain actually your mind accepts that intention as its new reality. And and because the Almert method is intention based, it is a positive seed planting, and it's
the thing of it is that you don't have to think about that. And so it's not the thinking mind that's fine. There's a difference between attention and thinking. I mean, you have, when your attention is going to those
your
points,
awareness,
to your awareness is going, that separates that part of the mind from the thinking part. And the thinking part is the part that eats up all the energy.
Yeah, that awareness we call the non-doing silent awareness.
The non-doing silent awareness. And that creates that gap of the mind where you understand that your thoughts are different than your awareness. So in focusing on, when the mind starts its little chatter and like the little mouse on the wheel, you can still take, because your attention is different, you can take that attention to be listening to that voice that's doing the guiding. That's creating that gap between you and the thinking mind. And that's what I didn't understand. I mean, it's been years of this, 10 years of the learning process of what that does. So now I understand that when my mind gets caught on something, this not being in Yoga Nidra, but obsessing, how we get on things like this coronavirus thing. I don't need to obsess with that. I understand that that's what the thinking mind is doing. But I can bring my awareness to something else, to my breath, my breathing, and I don't need to get caught up in that.
Yeah. When you're talking about awareness and that space between the thought and awareness, that silent space, that vast awareness, that is our capacity to be suspended in. When I did my Yoga Nidra training, we had breakout sessions so that we were put into smaller groups to practice with a mentor, and my group practiced in the big circus tent, which was our main practice area. So you're laying on the floor on your mat in hot Florida, and on a windy day that tent breathes.
Flaps.
It makes this noise, and you have ants that could crawl on you, and so in that process of being in a practice, when you're the one who's lying down receiving a session, you have to find a way to get around being distracted by, oh my gosh, is that an ant crawling at me? Oh my gosh, that tent's making so much noise. Oh my gosh, this. So because of that, I really learned how to use distractions to put me into a deeper Yoga Nidra experience, which, why I'm saying that is I have, one of my students came to me a couple of weeks ago, and she just moved into a new apartment. And she was very upset because the neighbors make so much noise, and they do their laundry at 2 o'clock in the morning, and like, how can I'm trying to lay there and be with my breath, and I get pulled out, and I can't practice because they're so loud. And I said to her, then use that as a tool to actually come back to, and as to sink you deeper into your experience. So I had told her about the whole thing with the tent and the ants, and so she was going to go home and try it out, because that using those distractions to bring you back into that space, that spacious awareness, can be like dropping a pebble down through honey. If you use the pebble represents the distraction, and you drop that into a jar of honey, and you just watch it sink down through to the bottom, that by the time it's gotten to the bottom, you have come completely back to your center and back into that suspended, peaceful, and then those distractions just kind of pass by. They pass around you. So thank you for joining the Escape Hatch to Wellness Captain's Table Conversations with me and today's guest, my mom, Linda Sechrist of Natural Awakenings Magazine. Again, thank you for tuning in, and stay tuned for more interesting topics of conversation with the Captain's Table Conversations and the Escape Hatch to Wellness.